Hello, everybody, and welcome to another installment of the football experience. Caleb, it's been a while. Feels like it's been
It
forever,
has.
but it's only been
I was.
we only did one episode last week, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. I'm
Yeah,
surprised you didn't lead with and we're back, as though we just came back from a break.
yeah.
Because
I should have.
we took a very prolonged break. Like nothing's happened, guys. We're back,
Nah.
all right.
Yeah, we're just back. What's new in the world of Caleb?
No, not much. Played golf on the Monday. Did not play well. It's not unusual, but disappointing nonetheless.
Golf weather's coming back. Spring is in the air, I assume.
I'll play golf in any weather, except when it gets a bit muddy. That's no fun. When they got to cut the course in half.
Oh, well, it is what it is.
And
I've.
what's new with you? I heard. I saw
Mm,
that you went to a certain game at your favorite stadium, the one that they worked so hard on.
man, dude, they're knocking down San Siro. I would gladly take San Siro and like just instead of knocking it down, destroying it, just ship it over. You know how people you know how sometimes you see those homes transported, like those fully built
Yeah.
homes. Just transport San Siro over here. Just give
Well,
us.
maybe you'll get one of the stadiums from the Qatar World Cup. Aren't
Oh
they
man,
shipping them off after?
I don't know if you're joking or if it's an actual possibility for them to
I
do
think
that.
they were talking about that. I heard years ago, but I didn't follow it closely, so I don't know if that was still the plan. But I heard it as a concept ages ago.
What is it made out of Lego or something? Fucking,
But I wouldn't put anything past the things that they can do in the Middle East with
well,
building stuff like that.
yeah, and like even the UEFA president, I think Shafrin, like I can't remember the exact words. He didn't call our stadium an abomination. He might have called it an embarrassment. And like surprising that for a national team and also for Dinamo Zagreb to have so much success with a stadium like that. Um,
You know,
yeah,
even fully operational, I always hated the fact that not only it had a running track around it, but the stands are like a good 20 meters past even the running track. It's madness.
yeah,
That stadium's huge in terms of how far away from the pitch it is.
it's horrible, and obviously watching it, like being there live with half a actually it wasn't half a stadium, it was probably like 2/3, 3/4 full. I think the stadium capacity is around 38, 40,000. I think there was 22,000 there. Um, but like then watching that live and then watching the Austria game, like because the Austria game is like a dome, it's like fully enclosed.
Yeah,
And
the
like
Ernst Hapoel. They played the '08 Euros final there.
yeah, and like even just on TV, like it felt like it was just like this sort of like echo chamber, uh, with like the atmosphere and everything. Whereas like Maximit, it's just like just openness. Like if
Gone.
yeah,
It's
it's
gone.
just like you yell something and just like flutters away. Um, but like it was a good experience. Like going to my first Croatia game, got the win as well. Saw a magnificent Ericsson goal. I gotta say though as well, like watching live, you get to see the quality of the players a lot better. Like you actually like when once they like take their touches and like once they like find passes, you're just like wow, like this. All right, I can see why this guy's a professional. Like he's on like 200,000 a week or whatever. Whereas on TV, most of the comments are like, "Oh, I could do that." like like seeing it on TV, it makes it look. I think it makes it look a little bit less amazing than seeing it like live. I'm not
I
sure
think
if you
I
agree
think
with me there.
Well, I think a little bit of it. The problem is I live in Australia, so like I don't have the opportunity to go and watch this world class midfield and Brozovic, Modric, and bloody oh, who am I forgetting?
Kovacic,
Kovacic.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I get to watch Aaron Moy, who like is a pretty good footballer,
He's
to
a,
be fair.
he was
Like,
Premier League
but
footballer.
I think it might have something to do with the camera and like how it's higher for us, so
Yeah.
you get that tactical view. And when
Mm.
you get a tactical view, it makes it appear like there's more space. But when you're at pitch side, you can really tell how in each other's faces players are. So then you can really tell the sharpness on the ground.
But even
I
like
think that might have something to do with it.
yeah, but even like I don't know how into movies or like especially like people are like our audience is, but like they say like if a movie is shot in like higher than 30 frames per second, then it makes it too realistic and it breaks that fourth wall where like you can't suspend your disbelief, and then you're like, oh well, this is real life. I don't believe what is actually happening. So it's probably that, like, we watch the games in 30 FPS. There's that, so it creates that fourth wall. Whereas, like, when we watch the games actually live in the stadium, we're watching it, I don't know what our eyes watch games at. I think it's like 120. But like, I think it's also to do with that as well. Like the whole frames per second thing is like argument as well. So. And also what you said, like with the camera angle, but yeah, enough about that. Like,
Well,
the
just
technicals
finally,
of it, if you want.
one thing I do like to experience by going to a live game is the atmosphere and just how, because obviously we've never played in games like that, so how people can play under that sort of scrutiny of 40, 50, 60,000 eyeballs all watching a game and just do it like it's nothing, a lot of these players. So I'm always interested for that aspect of live football as well as seeing the sharpness.
Yeah, if I could have, yeah, this also goes, it sort of ties into a little bit of a spectacle. It has nothing to do with international football. It has to do with football. You know how they had that charity match, Sidemen versus YouTube All Stars. I think they got like 40 or 50,000 in the stadium, like over the weekend.
Wow.
Like that ties into what I was going to say. Like, it would be interesting to see. Like, I'd love to see how I'd react having 40, 50,000 eyeballs, like even as an amateur, and also that noise going around. Like, we've only played like, when people would come down to watch our games, we'd get like 40, 50 people. Like, I think
The Langy reserve's got maybe 100
yeah,
on a good weekend.
It's actually interesting. Like, I'm playing here, like people actually come down to watch. Like, we're getting like I'm surprised to see how many people actually come down to watch. Like, there's probably like close to 100 coming to each game, and it's actually funny. Like hearing the crowd and like shout abuse and stuff like that. So thankfully I'm not getting any yet. Maybe in a couple of weeks. But yeah, like it would be really interesting to see how. I'd love to get that opportunity to see how I'd deal under that pressure, even as an amateur. So, and like things like that are actually being, I guess, available to people like us if we can, I don't know, grow this channel. So make sure you like and subscribe. Maybe we can
beat me to the punch. I was going to say we are on YouTube, so YouTube All Stars.
there you go. Like, send us the invite, pay for those first class tickets, and
yeah, all expenses paid, please.
Yeah,
I'll take economy tickets. I don't need first class.
Man, I'll travel down in the undercarriage department with like all the animals and stuff, man. But also like in the life of Nev, before we get back into football, I want to throw this out there. How like random stuff just like shows up on your like YouTube like recommended videos and stuff like that. You know what's been showing up?
Random.
Well, yeah, like it's targeted obviously, but like the other day, like this airsoft video showed up. Like this guy that like fully like dresses like in a ghillie suit with camo, and like he puts all the camo on his sniper as well, and he just like hides in bushes like in the game and just like just headshots people and stuff. And I've been like really getting into it. Like, it's actually surprising like how like satisfying it is to watch, and like yeah, it's a little like new little hobby or pastime of mine, like watching some British guy play airsoft, and the guy gets like 1 million views per video as well. So he's actually quite popular. I'll mention the channel Kicking Mustang, even though he doesn't really need a shout out from us. But if anyone's interested in just watching some guy take airsoft really seriously and having a little bit of laugh, check it out. But that's been my new pastime, I suppose.
And that was the Nevin experience, brought to you by On the Pod.
We'll see you guys next week. But was there anything from the internationals that caught your eye? We'll try to go chronologically. So obviously it was Croatia, Denmark on Thursday, and then also France, Austria on Thursday as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So did you take anything away from that, or? Because obviously with that, Croatia qualified for the knockouts as well. So.
Yep, the finals.
Yeah.
So the first thing I guess I'm interested to get your perspective on is, what do you think of the Nations League, the format, and just what the games felt like? Obviously, you had the chance to actually go to one. But how are they being received over there? Because you're living in Croatia, and how's the national team being received as well? It's sort of a two-part question, but first, just to start on the Nations League.
Well, over here, because we're such a small nation, I think we have 4 million people. I think we even fell slightly under 4 million recently. Any achievement, any decent achievement made by any sporting team or sports star is praised beyond anything, pretty much, because we're such a small nation. And obviously we take everything every competition seriously, and since they're not seen as friendlies anymore, then obviously we try to actually compete. I'm not sure how other nations take it. Obviously I'm not sure. I think in Australia, do you follow mostly the British media? I'm guessing. I think they're not taking it as seriously. They especially since they haven't had success.
Well, yeah, I wonder why.
Yeah, they're the games don't matter and stuff. But I don't know. I first thought that it was the top 2 teams from those groups that go through, but it's the top 1, so that you only have it pretty much just goes into semis. I'm personally, I think the format could maybe do with a little bit of adjustment.
Well, how so?
Maybe I'm not. Is it a 2-legged semi-final, or is it just one game?
There's a finals held in one country. I think the last one was in Italy in 2021, and then they play the 2 semi-finals and the final and the third place playoff.
Okay, so it's just a straight knockout. It's not two legs. Okay.
No.
I don't know. Maybe have the top 2 teams from each group go through instead of the top 1. But
the only thing is, I didn't think they wanted to tack on that many games.
It's only one extra game.
Yeah, but
it just creates a quarterfinal. It just creates a quarterfinals. So
no, but the thing, so international breaks, you get 2 matches in. The thing with that format is you only have to play 2 games.
Yeah,
which you can do in one international break. So I think that's probably their thinking behind that.
And I guess maybe from one perspective, it makes it a little bit even more competitive, where it makes the final game of the group more competitive, because the top 2 can actually just be locked in straight away after 4 games or even 5 games. Whereas it seemed that every group came down to the last game just because it is the top 1. So I don't know. I'm changing my perspective on that. So just on the fly. I can see what I don't know. Right now. I want to see if more and more teams take it seriously, because there isn't any prize for actually winning it, is there? There's no qualification.
There's a trophy, and there's a trophy, and you get the badge on your shirt. I don't know.
Is there automatic qualification for Euros or the World Cup or anything like that?
I'm not sure. It may. I don't know if they're floating it around for the Euros. That would have to be fact checked.
Yeah,
because the Euros have expanded teams anyway. I don't see why they can't give the Nations League winners a spot in the Euros at least.
Yeah, so because I think it's the Euros every 4 years, World Cup every 4 years, but like it's basically every 2 years as a major international tournament. So you could have it, that you qualify. So like depending on when you are in this, where you are in the cycle, you can qualify either for the Euros automatically or for the World Cup. I guess.
Oh, the World Cup's a bit far.
Well, it's only
because like
it's
that
only
just
a European spot.
Oh well, as a European spot, yeah. I guess you take away one other European spot, then yeah, that's fine. As long as Europe doesn't get an extra spot,
No, no,
because
no,
then
no. Like
yeah.
Europe just does it amongst themselves, or yeah. So that you get an automatic, but it's essentially going to be one of these top teams that are going to qualify for the World Cup anyway, or for the Euros. That's going to be like Germany,
Well,
Italy, France, but France.
well, yeah.
they didn't go
Italy
through,
made
but
the finals, didn't they? And they're not playing in the World Cup.
yeah. So they could have done with automatic qualification for the World Cup, but like I think with this one, it would have been too. I think because there was Euros last year as well, so that sort of ruined it. I think otherwise, I think there would have been a Nations League final last year. So then you could have used last year's one to qualify for this year. But yeah, that's basically just the schedule being all muddled around because of can't name the disease. I don't want to get blacklisted or shadow banned or anything. But yeah, like I don't know. I think there could be maybe like slight tweaks like that. Like maybe a little bit more of a reward for the winner.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but I guess the first counter that we kind of have to bring up is Kevin De Bruyne's post-match comments after their game against Wales, where he just basically said that he was bored of playing Wales. It's always the same teams, and so I guess you see a counter in that. For me, I think just get on with playing, because for me, for my eyes, these games, you can clearly tell that these teams are playing for at least something compared to friendlies. Friendlies offer me no interest whatsoever. Friendlies are just like when there is absolutely nothing on a game, what's the point of watching it? Like what are we doing? Like I watched a few of the Brazil games and I watch Argentina. Argentina was a real friendly feel against Honduras. Brazil, we'll touch on them later, but they looked pretty good. But still, in the back of your mind, it's like it's a friendly. What are we? Are we actually? We're not here for anything. So I think straight away the Nations League has helped with that. Yes, you do, because it's a league format, and because I don't know if they redraw the groups, but they should redraw the groups for each new
No,
Nations
they
League.
don't.
Obviously, yeah,
Oh,
I
but
think they should.
do
To
they
be
do
fair,
redraw them, but they don't. But they also have like teams that are in like a top tier, a middle tier, and a lower
oh,
tier.
okay, but they do redraw within the first tier, second tier.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
that's good, because in the second group this year we had a situation. I think it was Slovakia, Norway, and Serbia all in the same group. And you looked at the other second tier groups, it was like one was meant to have Russia in it, but Israel ended up topping that. So next Nations League will have Israel in the top tier, which I don't know, is whatever. They top their group of three teams. But I think straight away these teams are playing for something. And I think when they get to the finals, they're taking it reasonably seriously. I know Portugal, when they won the first one, definitely really wanted to win it. Ronaldo wanted to add something else to his international resume, and I guess you just get that atmosphere of it's like a tiny mini international tournament all in the one place where four countries go and they're trying to win. I would say a notable European Cup. It's definitely not rivaling the Euros. We know that, but in a way, I think it's just as impressive as winning a Euros. You've shown that over a course of a period of time, over 2 years, that you're actually arguably the best team in Europe. I know there's some sort of there's room for variance because you might have an easier group than other teams because there's only four teams in your league. But still, you're still playing over a 2 year period, and you're still having to win a final format. So I think it can give you the opportunity to give teams confidence going into the more major tournaments. So straight away, I think, and as well, you can't start the game with one team and completely change it at halftime and just play a new team, which just doesn't feel like real football. So yeah, anything to get away from friendlies, and Europe has the opportunity to do that by having so many decent countries that play in such a small area. So for me, I think it's been a win all round, and I think it's really helped cure the ailments of friendly football, which is just ghastly to watch. Really terrible. Even though Kevin De Bruyne would like to see it come back so he can play some different teams. And I kind of get that, but at the same time, at least you're playing for something here.
Well, to counter De Bruyne though, like he might be playing the same teams, but he's playing the like yes, like he might have been talking about Wales, who like you're going to get pretty much the top teams always in the top leagues, yeah. And you're going to end up playing the top teams more, so aren't you going to get better practice if you're versing Germany, Italy, France, Croatia, I guess, can be considered a top team now as well. Like we've shown it for a sustained period of time. I wonder whether we'll be considered top after Modric leaves, because he's the one that makes us top team. And like England as well, even though they've faltered. But like you're playing these teams more under this format, so you're getting practice in against better teams. So isn't that better for your development as a like a national team if you're playing these top teams? Because then you know what level you need to bring then when it comes to the World Cups, when it comes to the Euros. And also on your point, like where this is a format over 2 years, we have your group stage games in 1 year, and then you have your finals the next year. It means that you need to, as a team, you need to show, I guess, sustainability and longevity over like a 2 year period. You can't just show up for like a 4 week period, and like where there can potentially be surprises. Where like we see, like for instance, like Colombia at the 2014 World Cup, they made they had a great run. They made it to the quarterfinals, I think, and then they just fell off as a nation. Greece as well, like they won the 2004 World Cup, and like they were sort of competitive after that, but like they never did anything after that. Whereas like this is like, okay, you can have like a longer period of time of sustained success, I suppose. That's one way of thinking about it too.
You can almost say that you almost get a truer winner from this format than in a tournament football format. But obviously, tournament football you still need to qualify for as well, which gives you this format as well. So
Yeah.
the only thing I can kind of see Kevin De Bruyne on before we leave this point, the only thing I can kind of see his point on is where now do you get the time to experience playing against Asian, African, South American, North American teams, which you need that experience going into a World Cup. So if there's just a little like sort of bit of truth to what he's saying, then that's it for me. But again, it's in a friendly format, so that almost negates it for me completely. So I don't see much value in friendlies except for fitness in preseason.
Well,
But
hang on, isn't I'm sorry if you're going to make another point, but isn't South America thinking of bringing in their version of the Nations League?
I don't know, but
So
that'd be all right as well because they play too many friendlies.
Yeah, and I also heard that there might be some kind of like cross format between the European Nations League and the South American Nations League as well, like maybe in regards to the finals or something like that. So I think I heard something that they're considering doing something along those lines. So then you get
I like that.
Then you get your competition against like your Brazils, your Argentinas, your Uruguays.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that sounds good. This sort of competition, but incorporating the whole world. I think that would be
just
World
Cup
like
every 2 years.
Yeah, but this is like League World Cup. It's not tournament format. This is the league. it's I don't know. But you said something interesting. I thought probably, and I know the emphasis is on Luka Modric. He is the main guy. But I actually look around that Croatia team and I kind of fancy them. I think they're strong in a lot of areas. And probably the only area, and I'm going to compare them to a team maybe a little bit later on, but the only area I don't think they're strong in, even though I wouldn't say they're weak in, is probably up front.
Mm-hmm.
But Perisic is one of those three. And Perisic, the beauty of Perisic is that he can give you a lot going forward, but he can protect fullbacks because he's got that experience of playing as a wingback. So if you have a fullback who may be struggling in a game, and he can play off both sides. So if you need to double up an opponent, maybe say you're playing a Brazil and you're playing Vinicius Junior, then there's no doubt that the fullback, whoever it be, Juranovic or I think it's Stanisic, the other right back, but whoever it may be, they're going to need help from a Perisic. So having a player that versatile in the front three who can work both ways like that is somewhat invaluable nowadays. But the defense, I think, look, it's not the strongest defense in the world, but I like the fullbacks, and you've got options in the fullbacks as well. The centre backs are fine. Guardiola's a pretty good centre back. His partner for me is always a little bit iffy, whoever it is. But I think you look around the world and how many of these nations have centre back partnerships where you're like, that's money? Not many. There's always one good one and then an iffy one next to it. So next to him. So I'm just like I'm gonna let you sort of run with this idea because I just wanted to push back on your behalf of this idea that it's all about Luka Modric. It's a lot about Luka Modric.
Yeah.
And I didn't even mention the strongest part of the team, which is the midfield, which is arguably maybe the best midfield in the world. Maybe Kovacic needs a few more games going into the World Cup. That's maybe one thing I'll say, but the other two are all three are fantastic when they play well. So, and we don't need to talk about how good Luka Modric is. So I just look at that team and I don't know, I fancy them. I think they're a good shout for a dark horse if they can be called that after making the last final.
You also didn't mention the goalkeeper. Like, I'm actually surprised that no team outside of Croatia has come in for Livakovic because he's still at Dinamo Zagreb and he's only like 28, I think, or 27. And he's been solid for years, and like he's good with his feet. He makes good saves as well. And like I said, I'm surprised no one's come in for him. And then, who are our other two goalkeepers? We've got Kalinic and damn, I can't remember the other one, but I think he plays in France, if I'm not mistaken. So like goalkeeper, like we have a good goalkeeper. I'm happy with this team, and like you said, we have our fullbacks, our right back. We have I think we have three options. So we have Juranovic, Stanisic, and I think there's one other player. Versaiko's retired from international football, but we had him there as well. I think there might be one other player though that I'm forgetting. In centre back, we have Guardiola is like touted. I think he's only like 20 as well. And he's touted as like the next big defensive centre back, and he's also converted a left back into centre back as well. And then we have Lovren, who's he always played better for Croatia than what he did for Liverpool, so you don't really rate him that highly. He does have a mistake in him though as well. He does. Vida is getting on, but he's still I guess you can still rely on him. And then we have young centre backs coming in. Schüttler, I think, played alongside Guardiola. I think there was another centre back that he actually had had an ACL injury or something for Dinamo a couple of weeks back. So he's out, and he I think played against France. I can't remember the name of him at the moment. And him and I think Schüttler at the back were just absolutely solid against France 2 or 3 months ago when we played them. And then left back, we have options as well. We have Sosa, Barisic, and I think there's one other one. And then
through the whole range.
I'm sort of in my mind, we're just thinking about the 2018 World Cup and what you said. Our midfield is probably the strongest in the world right now, and that's what I was saying back then in 2018, where it was Brozovic, Modric, and Rakitic. Now it's Brozovic, Modric, and Kovacic. And the only thing is with Kovacic is he gets injured and he doesn't get that many games under his belt. But he's a lot better now than what he was 4 years ago. He has this maturity about him, and he's turning into a Modric type of midfielder, whereas before he'd try to run with the ball and break the lines. He still does that occasionally, but now he sort of makes things tick more, and he's turning into that sort of Modric type role mold. Brozovic, dude, you know how you I rate him highly, but you rate him even higher than what I rate him. And after watching the Austria game, once he got injured and had to get taken out after 20 minutes, we sort of fell apart, and it took us a good, half an hour going into the second half to actually bring things back under control and back into the way that we wanted to play. And like you said, up front, well, we haven't exactly had a striker where when it falls to his feet, you're like, okay, this is going to be a chance. This is going to be a goal since Davor Shukad. Since the 90s, we haven't had a striker like that since the 90s, and that's been probably one of our biggest faults. Whereas like you look at other teams where you're like for instance like France or Brazil, even England with Harry Kane. Once their forward players get the ball, you're like, okay, this is dangerous. You don't want those players to get the ball. Whereas when our forward players get the ball, you're like, they're probably going to deal with this. This isn't more of a chance for the attacking team. This is like probably a 50-50 chance. So we don't have that clinical striker necessarily. Even when we had Mandzukic, I never saw him as a clinical striker that's going to put the ball in the back of the net, 8 or 9 times out of 10 when it falls to his feet in or around the box. But he was always a workhorse up front, which it's always good to have. But
and when you match him with Perisic's skill set, then that's a pretty dangerous combo to have. Someone who's good in the air with someone who likes to play wide and can cross really well off both feet. So
yeah, but
I think they're definitely missing that. I don't know what's up with Rebic. Why?
I don't know, man.
Is he injured?
He isn't even getting games for AC Milan.
Yeah,
but
I think he started the season.
But he had a falling out though with the coach at last year's Euros. So like a lot of those players, there was a couple of players that got dropped because going back to the Euros last year, like it seemed like the team was didn't have that unity or that cohesion, because I think a lot of new players were brought in. So it was like half of the 2018 squad and then half of this new generation that's supposed to be brought in, and there just wasn't. It just seemed like there wasn't that seriousness or that cohesion. And now I think he's starting to bring some of those players back in. Petkovic got brought in. Kramaric as well. Kramaric, I don't really rate him that high as a finisher. He's more like a number 10.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, like I said, we're just missing that striker, and I don't know. I guess you could consider us a dark horse for the World Cup, but I don't think I consider us probably less of a chance than in 2018. Slightly less of a chance than in 2018.
Okay, so I want to get to a comparison question, but just before I do, just one last point on that midfield. Obviously, all three fantastic midfielders, and then a jewel in the crown in Modric. Brozovic, and I do love Brozovic, you're 100% right, but the only somewhat problem I have with him in this midfield is that he's meant to be the holding midfielder, and they play with 4 at the back. So you see when something breaks down and he's not quite disciplined enough to be in position at all times, you see what happens with that Eriksen goal in the Denmark game, which still is a fantastic goal. You expect him maybe to get only 2 or 3 out of 10 from there, so it's still a fantastic goal. But that's maybe one little problem I have, but it's a tiny problem on the grand scheme of things. But just that balance in midfield is very fluid. And it reminds me of another midfield that I saw play this week, or the weekend, I think, against Honduras. And that's Argentina with Paredes, Rodrigo de Paul, and Giovanni Lo Celso in there. That maybe Paredes holds a little bit more than Brozovic, but probably the same. It's very fluid. They like to move across the pitch. Lo Celso likes to stay a little bit higher. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not putting those 3 players. Lo Celso I do rate highly as a player, but the other 2 I think are a little bit average, but they're functional. They can do a job. They're technically pretty good, and it seemed that they knew how to move off Messi in particular, and Rodrigo de Paul in particular knew how to move off Messi, sort of like a poor man's Rakitic back in probably the last great Barcelona team before I expect this one to be great. But yeah, so I see big comparisons between Argentina and Croatia. Obviously, your midfield hands down wins that battle over those 3, but those 3 are still functional and serviceable and playing high-level football across Europe as well, which is obviously important. I see them having one good centre back in Lissandro Martinez, and then he plays next to someone who's a bit iffy. I think it's Basella at the moment from Betis. Good fullbacks in Tagliafico and Molina. Molina I don't rate too highly, but he's functional again. Plays at a top club in Europe in Atletico. Rulli, who's a bit up and down as a goalkeeper, but when he's up, he's quite good. The difference is, of course, in this team you have Messi and Lautaro Martinez as the sort of two strikers, and then when I saw him against Honduras, it was Papu Gomez on the left wing, and obviously I just so you guys win the midfield hands down, but Argentina win the front line hands down, and I think the defenses are comparable. I think I might like your depth a bit better, but when everyone's fit, I think they're very comparable. So I guess the question is, which team would you rather be going into this World Cup if you want to win it, Argentina or Croatia?
Removing all bias, Croatia, because I think midfield is what wins you games. Because if you can't get the ball to your forward line, like what you think Martinez and Messi are gonna be able to win those aerial duels?
That's what I'm saying. I think DePaul and I think Paredes, they're technical enough to be able. I don't trust them in a battling midfield, but they are technical enough to get the ball forward. And it looks like this Argentina team, from what I saw, and I know it's a friendly, and I just chat all over friendlies at the start, but from what I saw, they favoured a style that just I almost call it over control of the game. They get a lot of men around the ball when they have possession. They give each other a lot of short options around the ball, and they just transfer it very slowly, either side to side, and then they're just looking for the pockets to give it into Lautaro and Messi and Papu Gomez even, who is very good in tight spaces. So I think they're functional in that. Obviously, I give your midfield definitely the edge, but I just push back on that statement a little bit because I think the midfield gives you a fantastic foundation to win the game, but the strikers do win the game for me. The guys in the forward areas who can produce something, and obviously Messi and even Lautaro. I think Lautaro is going to have to be really good if they're going to win this thing, and Messi's going to have to roll back the years. But see, that's my conundrum. Do I want the superior midfield, or do I want the guys who can pop up with a moment, or I trust to pop up with a moment of magic? And it's a bit of a coin toss for me between those two teams going into the World Cup, which is, we must add, is less than 2 months away.
Yeah, the only one thing that I will give Argentina praise for is that like I've only seen them like a handful of times recently, but like they've learnt to not just give the ball to Messi and let's see what he does. They've learnt to actually play as an 11. And they've learnt to like use Messi as just another player, not as the guy. Which, going back to 2018, when Croatia beat, I know they're not even in the same group for this World Cup, but like when Croatia beat Argentina, I was saying all you need to do is shut down Messi, and that's the game. That's the whole game plan, and our midfield was good enough to do that, to like not allow the balls to come into Messi's feet, and like he was pretty much anonymous in that game. Whereas now, like they've learned to play better because they're not just going through Messi at all times. So that's one thing that I will give Argentina credit for, and they're a lot more fluid. Like especially when I watched them against Italy, which was like an actual competitive game. I think it was like 2 months ago. They looked great. Like they gave Italy like a lot of problems, and yeah, like it was, like I said, it was. It's good that they're utilizing all of their players instead of just one of their players, and relying on him to give assists and give goals.
Yeah, definitely. I think we touched on it in a pod our last sort of international pod. I think it's episode 3. Don't ask why, but I was listening to it again today.
Man, if you want to break down voice.
Yeah, no, I don't sound great, but if you can look past that and you want to hear a nice sort of summary of breakout stars from the previous World Cups, then go and give that pod a listen to as we gear up for the World Cup.
I'll make sure to tag it in the video.
Yeah, do so. And you don't like the thing is you have to listen to us, but you don't have to see us in that one because that was all audio. So
That was back with
um,
the cartoon picture.
yeah, exactly. I think it was flattering that
Yeah.
cartoon picture. um, so I think this will be a good time to take a break. After when we come back, we'll go into the other team or major contender who played on that morning, and we'll touch on the French, or maybe it was just the French B team for this round of fixtures. But we'll go into that after the break. And we're back, and I think it's time to turn our attention to what many people would probably consider their favourites to win the upcoming World Cup, and that's the French. Unfortunately, or maybe indicatively, we didn't get to see the full team. Obviously, the one who I definitely wanted to watch, and we didn't get to watch, was Theo Hernandez, who I don't know how long he's out for, but I think he actually did get injured in that Napoli game. So unfortunately, he wasn't there for the French. We know, obviously, Pogba hasn't played all season, and Kante's played very little of this season, N'Golo Kante. So, yeah, they were definitely missing players, but I mean, how much can you call it a B team when you still have Kylian Mbappe on the pitch, Olivier Giroud, Tchouameni, um, Mendy, you've got...
Did
They have a
Griezmann play,
lot.
or did he only play 30
Griezmann
minutes?
played, yeah. That's good. But yeah, I thought they looked pretty impressive against Austria, which ultimately was enough to secure their place in League One for the next Nations League, as they were in relegation trouble themselves, which is crazy to think about. Um, I don't know. I thought I'd be riding this team a lot higher, but I got reservations. The big news that I have coming out of my tiers of my list after watching this round of Nations League fixtures and a few friendlies from the South American teams is the French are no longer in the top tier for me. They're not in the contending tier. That tier now just stands at, and they're only in by a thread. But Brazil are the only team I have in the top tier, and they're only hanging on by a thread because, well, I guess we'll go into Brazil later, um, but yeah, the French, I think I just had to knock them down because there's too many questions about Conte. There's too many questions about Pogba. I don't like the tactics that Deschamps plays with. I don't know why they play with a back five. You've got some of the best athletes. You've got some of the best defensive fullbacks in Ferland Mendy and Benjamin Pavard, who they're not overlapping fullbacks for me, but when asked to defend, they're top of that job. Rafael Varane has come back into some form, and I know he played the first game, but not the second. Maybe you're a bit iffy with who to put. I think Saliba would instantly become a better centre back if he was playing as one of a two rather than the wide of a three. And I don't know why he came off in the Denmark game and not Upamecano, who was again at fault, I think, for another goal. And I can't get behind Upamecano. He's given me no reason since his Bayern move to think that this guy is actually a top level centre back. The mistakes, it's every game. It's incredible. So too many question marks for me. That midfield, while I like Chouameni, absolute unreal talent, is he ready to be the main midfielder in a World Cup winning team? And not only that, and this is why I don't like the tactics, the main midfielder is just one of the two, and then there's no one either side of him. And I guess this is a trend I'm seeing a lot in football because the Dutch sort of play this way, the Belgians sort of play this way, but these 3-4-3s, I guess they'd call them. But when you're in defensive shape, it becomes a 5-2-3 if those wide players don't tuck in. I think what's made Tottenham so successful this season is the fact that those wide players actually tuck in next to their central midfielders and offer some support. But when you see it in the example of the French, when you see it even in the example of the Dutch, those wide players are staying up almost as sometimes you play with strikers. I mean, Serbia play this way as well. They play with two strikers there and one in behind. So now you only have two men in midfield, and there's all this space either side of them because those wide players aren't coming back and tucking in next to him and offering support. So if you're going to play that way, you need N'Golo Kante fit because he's the kind of guy who can do that job of two. But is he going to be fit? I don't trust him to last the month or whatever it is, however many consecutive games in that time span to win a World Cup. So, but this team still has, firstly, Theo Hernandez to come back, but then secondly, this team still has Kylian Mbappe. So how far am I pushing him down? No further than the second tier, which is clumped in there with Portugal, and I believe I bumped Spain up into that second tier as sort of they're not really flawed, they're not stale, but they're not quite that real, like, I expect this team to be in the final and win. I can see things going wrong with this French team now. So I'm interested to get your thoughts on what you saw from the French.
I think the French are going through a transitionary period because they're blooding a lot of new talent. Like I think this. Like,
well, they're kind of forced to, aren't they?
Yeah, well, they have to. You know, you have your transitionary periods. The only thing like with the French is that like they have so much talent to actually that can fill those spots, but it's just that they don't have the experience or that team chemistry yet. Because like for instance, like Saliba, like I think this is only like what his second or third game for the French. And then you said Varane didn't play against was it Denmark or Austria that he didn't play?
Yeah, Denmark. He played against Austria.
Yeah, and he's still sort of. I still consider Varane sort of coming back because he missed so much of last year. You mentioned Theo Hernandez isn't playing. Griezmann was he even in the team or? Because like Griezmann,
Griezmann played both games, I think.
Okay,
and Griezmann's really important to this system because he's the one who, somewhat like Neymar for PSG, he's the one who offers more defensive work and can come in and help that midfield out a little bit. But still, like you're still waiting for him, and then you're asking Chouameni to hold down the fort. And I don't like the balance of the wing backs either. If you're going to play with wing backs, for me, you need better balance than Ferland Mendy and Benjamin Pavard, who would. Well, Mendy can get forward, but I don't like him in the forward areas. I don't think he's particularly efficient when he goes up there. I'd rather just see him defend. And Pavard, for me, is almost a centre-back more than he is. He's almost in that new Kyle Walker sort of phase. I think maybe a bit more intelligent, but obviously not the kind of speed that Kyle Walker has.
Yeah, but you have Chouameni learning his trade as well. Like he's like is he not 19 only? So it's now a mixture of like all these like 19, 20, 21-year-olds and all these like 30-year-olds pretty much. Because like, you know, you have Giroud, Griezmann, Lloris, Varane as well. So it's like they're trying to get that blend now, and I think that this World Cup is just coming a little bit too soon. It might be similar to that. This is sort of similar to that. If I'd probably actually need to go back and have a look at this, but remember the 2002 World Cup? So they came off of 98 win, 2000 Euro win, and then they just fell apart. The 2002 World Cup, they didn't even make it out of group stages because I think they were trying to get that transition through, weren't they? Where there was a lot of players that were actually retiring from international football, but there was a lot of new young players coming through, I believe, because it wasn't.
It probably had an influence, but it's
Yeah,
also
it's also
it's also somewhat the French
the
thing
French.
because they won. They obviously made the '06 final, and then
Yeah,
2010 they fell apart again. So
yeah. So yeah, just like their results based off of this last run in this Nations League. Yeah, like what you said, they're not really the favorites for me anymore. Like, or one of the favorites anymore. They're like maybe an outside chance. Like they probably like maybe fourth or fifth favorite just because it is the French, and they have so many talented players. But it's just now a question of whether they can actually click and make it work.
yeah, I'm definitely not going that far to put them as far as 4 or 5.
Who
They're
would you have in
probably
front of them?
still just Brazil, well, I think, but
But what
they're
other
lumped
teams?
in now with Portugal and Spain. But I still think if you forced me to choose between those three, I still pick the French out of those other contenders because we'll get onto those other two teams. But yeah, for me, I still think, like I say, now the big thing for me is, and I think this addresses your age concern, which is I think also a problem a little bit for Spain as well when you look at it that way. But I think if you kind of have lost hope for Pogba being fit enough to be a really key contributor to a World Cup winning side. I guess he's still got nearly 2 months. So he's gonna have to we're gonna have to start hearing some noise coming
Wait, what's the
out
deal with him?
that
Is he injured or is it something else?
I can't remember what he's injured with, but he opted to try and rehab it, I believe, before the World Cup so that he could play sooner. But now I think he got the surgery, but he might have got the surgery like a couple of weeks ago or even a month ago. But I think he finally got the surgery, which means I think he'll be touch and go. But obviously, like he won't have had the opportunity to come back and play much football before then. So I guess if that's how it plays out, I've kind of lost hope for him being a really key contributor in the squad. But the one, and I haven't heard any updates. I haven't seen any updates. Maybe I probably should have looked for him first. But N'Golo Kante, if they could get him back, I think that addresses somewhat that age problem. If Chelsea could get it back soon, then now you have a spine where you've got experience, but you've got the legs around it to cover. Because with experience, obviously, comes older age. So I guess they've got the legs to cover around that area. And now, if you do want to play with two central midfielders, he gives you a good option to do that. Um, I don't think they need to play with two central midfielders, though. I don't know why they're persisting with this. I think they can play a back four and then a midfield three, and then Griezmann in behind Mbappe and Giroud, or even a fluid front four. They got so many options. I mean, they could put in Kuko in this team, Dembele they could put in this team. So, and then obviously Camavinga could come in if they get N'Golo Kante back. Then I think they still have a really high ceiling, and that's why I can't move them off my second favourites. Just because, and they have the player who I think is best positioned to be the best player in the world coming out of the World Cup, and Mbappe, who's going to be hugely motivated, and for me still is the premier. I don't know. He might be the best player in the world. He's definitely up there, especially given that he's already won a World Cup at his age. I mean, you can obviously on form you'd probably go Haaland. On form you'd put Vinicius up there, and I guess I guess this offers a little segue if you haven't got anything else to say about the
I
French.
was just going to mention
Yeah.
that I just looked up N'Golo Kante, and apparently he's back in. Says that he's back in full training for Chelsea. That was 14
Okay.
hours ago. So he had his first training session yesterday.
That is good news for Chelsea and the French then. So
Yeah.
look, if Chelsea get him back and he plays well in the lead up to the World Cup, then France might be straight back into that top tier. But the team who are in the top tier, and I guess we'll talk about the superstar that Mbappe is, but the guy who I think maybe will be the most motivated player going into this World Cup, or should be. And I think we mentioned it on that pod that I referenced earlier. But for me, it's Neymar. Neymar, I think, has been playing well at PSG. And I think that might just be smoke and mirrors because he's obviously in this lead up to the World Cup. But if it is, that is good news for Brazil because it means he sees this World Cup as the be all and end all almost of his career. Because to win a World Cup for Brazil, for a Brazilian, is the most important thing. And this is probably his best chance. He has a genuine running mate in Vinicius Jr., who we already know his pedigree as a running mate for Karim Benzema in last year's Champions League. And he's gone on to another level this year. And I know you'll probably have thoughts on this, but when I saw the team sheets going into the friendlies and saw that Gabriel Jesus wasn't even in the squad, which is great for you guys because now he gets a rest and whatnot. But he should be in at least the Brazil squad, if not the starting 11. I thought he definitely should have been in the starting 11. But
Nah.
then you saw yeah,
Go on, and then I'll.
you see Richarlison, and it's like, why the hell is he playing? Because I'm a bit like you, I haven't really rated him. But the way he played for Brazil and the job he does for Brazil, I think almost makes him at least as good. Because I think Jesus could do the defensive work that Richarlison does, but probably give you more going forward. But maybe he can't do the defensive work as well as Richarlison does. Richarlison's really good in the counter press. He's really good at tracking back. Just being a nuisance, really, and helping out those players like Vinicius and Neymar, helping them stay further forward because he offers all of that industry and that work rate as a counterbalance to them. So I was really impressed with the role that he was doing. I was quite impressed with Brazil going forward. Fluid front four. Rafinha's been in great form for Barcelona and he played well for Brazil as well. Richarlison, who I just touched on, and Neymar and Vinicius, who are two of top 5, top 10 players in the world on form at the moment. So Brazil are looking a scary prospect, but it's been a while since they've played competitive football. Not since even the late qualifiers. I think they didn't lose a match in qualifying, them in Argentina, so they weren't pushed all the way to the end. So there'll be question marks about that, no doubt.
Well, none of the three
Yeah.
main Brazilians for Arsenal made the team, but I think the coach was questioned on it, and he basically said that he's seen enough from those players, if I'm not mistaken. But even so, like, I'm just looking at the team that played against Tunisia, like Alisson. You need
seen enough.
Thiago Silva,
Marquinhos,
Thiago Silva, and
Casemiro.
Marquinhos, Neymar. You've seen enough. Casemiro. The only ones that you haven't, I guess, seen enough of is Richarlison, Danilo, Alex Telles, and Lucas Paqueta and Rafinha, because Rafinha is new to the squad, if I'm not mistaken.
It was almost a slap in their face to say, I've seen enough and you're not in the Brazil squad.
But like the Martinelli one is weird for me because he only made his Brazil debut, like, I think in the last international break. So how have you seen enough of him, for instance? Like, unless it's like, I've seen enough, I don't want any more.
Yeah.
Which is like really weird because like Martinelli's like he's a, I don't know, based on form, he's probably like just a rung below like a Vinicius or a Rafinha, just because Rafinha's moved to Barca.
I'll just interject on this season. He's a couple of rungs below Vinicius, but Rafinha's a decent call. Vinicius is top tier.
He doesn't have that. Yeah, he doesn't look. He doesn't have the finishing of Vinicius. Like he's not yet at that 20 goals a season level, but like I think he's getting to like. For instance, if I was to ask you, okay, Vinicius, like 60th minute, Vinicius is injured. Richarlison's already on the field. Who else would be in that? Rafinha's already on the field. You'd bring Martinelli on, and you wouldn't be losing too much. Like
you'd be losing a bit, but you'd be getting a similar type of player.
Yeah, you'd be getting. Yeah, that's my point. You'd be getting
one
a
thing
similar
I could
player.
definitely. Yeah, I can definitely agree with you on the point that he may be just a little bit behind in the curve. Obviously, because he's younger as well.
I think he's like 2 years younger, maybe.
Exactly. So it might be the case that he is just 2 years behind Vinicius in development, and that's the only reason there's that level difference. I think that would be a good one to say. But as things stand, I think Vinicius is in the top 3 of what I've seen this season, and he obviously won the Champions League last year. But it would be either Martinelli or Gabriel Jesus who would be one of the players I'd bring on if I had an injury to Vinicius, no doubt.
Yeah, but Vinicius played out in the wing, and Jesus you'd play.
No, I know, but then you can put Richarlison out on the. It just depends on how the game's going.
Yeah, it depends.
What it dictates, but in a vacuum on quality, it's one of those two. I don't know who else would be in the discussion, really.
But my point is like that. If you brought him on, you'd probably be losing that clinicalness in the box, but up and down that line, you'd be getting a very similar product. But yeah, obviously he's like what you said, and I think you put it perfectly. Like he's probably 2 years behind in his development. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting whether those 3 can make the squad. But you think I'm just looking at the who their centre backs: Thiago Silva, Marquinhos. Who else are the centre backs?
They're the only 2 I saw. I mean, Danilo can play it. He's played a bit in one of the 3. And Militao obviously plays centre back quite often, but he played right back in the first game.
So it's like, why wouldn't you bring Gabriel on? Like, I don't know why he wouldn't be in this 23 at least. I can see Jesus why he didn't bring why he wasn't brought in this 23, because you have like Richarlison, Rafinha, Neymar there, Rodrigo. So you have plenty of options up front, and I think so. Like I can see why he didn't come, but Martinelli and Gabriel are weird ones to not include them, because they're new additions to this Brazil lineup who I thought you would want to get more, like you'd want to see more of going into the World Cup.
I think we've established now that Tite's reasoning is somewhat BS. And I don't know, maybe he just doesn't fancy those guys for whatever reason, which is a weird one. I definitely agree.
I think, barring injuries, I think Jesus definitely makes the squad for the World Cup.
He should,
because he's already. I think he already established himself as a pretty much a Brazil. I'd say he should be a Brazil starter. Like you'd start him ahead of Richarlison. But again, like what you said.
Yeah,
depends what you want.
The role of Richarlison, yeah. But I think if we're gonna now, they're obviously, and I think last pod you said they're your favorite as well. Did you not?
I think I'd put them as my favorite. But I'm just like looking at their midfield. Like you got Casemiro, Lucas Paqueta.
You did it. You got there. You got straight. You beat me to the punch again. God damn it! I was gonna say it.
Fabinho.
You don't need my help.
Yeah, but like, hang on. Is Guimaraes injured? Is that why he didn't come along, or because he didn't play for Newcastle in like the last 2 games, if I'm not mistaken, as well?
I thought he was back just before.
Maybe he was back a little bit too soon to be called up, but. Yeah, like if Guimaraes is there, like that is huge.
Guimaraes has to be there.
And then Casemiro isn't playing for United really, so that's going to be a weird one. Fabinho,
Yeah, he looked fine.
Fabinho's
Casemiro
sort of been
looked fine
injured.
in it.
He's had a couple
No,
of
he
injuries,
just
hasn't he?
no.
Or
They
he's,
just. I thought he was pretty fit going into the run-in. He's been our only fit midfielder for
okay,
Liverpool, so I just think he favours Casemiro over Fabinho, which is a
yeah,
very nice conundrum to have.
yeah. And then like what
But yeah,
3 years ago, you could throw Fernandinho in that mix, so you have like three
yeah.
world class defensive mids. It just depends how he played with Fred as well. What the hell's Fred doing there?
Exactly. So it's the turd in the punch bowl for Brazil is that midfielder next to Casemiro or Fabinho.
Yeah,
Unless it's Bruno Guimaraes, because if he's playing, then he's a fantastic midfielder. And all of a sudden, Brazil only have one weakness, and that's left back, who they're having to rely on Alex Telles at the moment. Because obviously
there no
Marcelo
other-
has been the resident
yeah.
left back for so many years,
Is there
but
no one
he's
else?
too old. I actually don't think there is.
I'm just thinking, like,
anyone
I'm
else.
trying to, like, off the top of my head, I'm trying to go through all the top teams. I'm like, there's no Brazilian left back. I'm like, that's so weird. Even right back, like, there's no like.
But as far as
How
as
weird
far
is
as
that?
weak, yeah. Well, I don't think it's weird because you could go through all the international teams, and there's going to be at least one position where you're like, I don't fancy that guy.
Yeah,
that
but Brazil
much.
not having a left or right back like that, like you'd always go back in time and like you'd be like, holy shit, like they have a world class left and right back. Now it's like, ooh, they're a little bit short in that area, which is on paper at least, which is interesting for Brazil.
I guess the one they're missing, who I don't know why he's fallen off a cliff, but it's Alexandro from Juventus. I think back in his day, he was a top left back, but a few years, I don't know. He hasn't been on that level for a few years, and I guess now they're relying on Alex Telles, who gives you some things because he's more. I see him as more of a sort of central midfield player with those types of qualities. Who wasn't quite good enough for that position, so he's been shoved sort of to left back, and he's left-footed, obviously, which helps. Defensively, I think you can get at him, but maybe that's a case of like what Croatia can do with Perisic. Maybe Brazil can just put Richarlison on the left wing for that game. Maybe play Vinicius more as a striker with Neymar. So they got options like that, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the central midfield observation because I watched them, and obviously Bruno Guimaraes wasn't playing in either of the games. So it made it pretty glaring that when you're starting games with Fred and even Paquetá, who I'm not a huge fan of, I think he performs an all right function for this team, but I don't think he's anything special. Certainly not what the transfer fee that West Ham paid for would suggest. So that's my only problem area, obviously, along with left back. But I think left back you can get by because every international team will have a weakness in the squad, and it just depends where that comes and how bad it is. And for me, Brazil are the team with the least and the less bad weakness. So for me, they have to be top favourites.
Yeah, like they're stacked up front. I think they're stacked. They're stacked in goalkeeper, obviously, but you know you're not going to sub your goalie.
Holding mid.
Holding mid, they're
Got two
stacked.
world class ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Centre back, I think they're stacked as well.
In international terms, yeah, because if you compare them to other nations, what they have options.
Is there not one more centre back that I'm missing? Like Militao's there, Thiago Silva, Marquinhos, Gabriel should. I reckon he should be there because if you're going to you usually bring four centre backs, right? So he would be the fourth choice.
And he's a left-footed. He's a left-footed centre back.
Is there no other centre back, like Brazilian centre back that plays for like a top tier team? That's I thought they were way more stacked than what like in my head than or maybe it's just their starting 11 that's like stacked, but then like their midfield is it seems a little bit lacking, at least the game. I'm just watching the Tunisia lineup. Like at least here they seem a little bit. Hey, Lodi, is he a left mid or is he a left back? He plays.
He can play left.
Yeah, I thought he plays left back for Atletico.
Well, Nottingham Forest now.
Oh yeah, he got transferred, didn't he? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Brazil.
I don't know. That's why I landed on Brazil after seeing him.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you there. I think they lack. They have obviously like an abundant, like, well, two of the best defensive mids, but then who's going to play alongside them or in front of them? That could give them a little bit of a headache if they can't get on top in the midfield. But they're definitely, I think, like probably like 7 out of the 11 or 8 out of the 11 positions. They're like, I think it's like, you'd say it's world class. Like you'd probably say
Yeah.
they're probably like the best player, or one of the best players in the world. Like Allison, would you say he's the best goalkeeper, or like one and two with Edison? When they
Well,
have,
last season I did say he was.
yeah, they have both of them. Thiago Silva's like what, 38. Like he was the best centre back like 5 years ago. He's obviously age is catching up to him. Marquinhos, one of the best. Neymar, one of the best. Casemiro, and obviously Vinicius as well. Like they like, yeah, 7 or 8 of the positions they have like one of the best players in the world, which I think
Yeah.
that's more than what any other team you can say for any other team.
That's what I was going to say as a sort of little counter to the midfield conundrum is what other national team, apart from the one we started the pod with in Croatia, has a really world-class central midfield to punish him? It's sort of a trend that I've seen, particularly this season. Where are the great central midfielders? I'm not sure where they are anymore because De Bruyne definitely has the capacity to be that. And I guess we'll touch on Belgium in a minute. But he doesn't really play that role anymore.
Yeah.
You see more and more teams sort of emptying this central midfield area and putting more players up front or maybe an extra player behind, as we see with a 3-4-3 or what turns into a 5-2-3. So how much can they be punished by other nations' midfields? Maybe that Croatia matchup is a really bad matchup for them. And I guess in tournament football, matchups play a part in deciding who wins it at the end of the day. So I guess that's where I land. If it's Gamaris and Casemiro, I have a lot of faith in that midfield, to be fair. So that plugs a huge gap and makes them definite favourites for me. But in that pod that I was listening to, the one I referenced, episode 3, it was interesting to hear how your tone in particular has changed because you made a bold comment in that pod and said that at that time, England were your favourites to win it all. And I'm interested to get what your take is on this England team and where you've had to reevaluate that assessment over the months.
I think on paper they have like very good players, but I think the manager needs to change. In all honesty, like
Damn, man, did you have you been reading my mind over the last this international break?
I think I've been reading.
Oh, damn, you're killing it all.
I think I've been reading the mind of every English person, even though you're not English, but you know you have close ties with the English. But I watched both games and like for that team to play on the back foot, to employ tactics where you play on the back foot, it's just horrible. And also the fact that look, we've gone in hard enough on Harry Maguire, but
No, apparently we haven't.
no, I'm not gonna go hard in on him because it's actually Southgate's fault that he's even in the team. Like because now the thing is he's now picking players that he trusts instead of picking players based on merit and form. He shouldn't be anywhere near that team. Like or even like I'm not even sure he's been near the squad because like I know Ben White. And this isn't my Arsenal bias, but I know Ben White's been playing right back, and he's been fantastic at right back. So is that the reason why he's been overlooked for these fixtures? I'm not sure, but he should have. I reckon he should have been definitely in the squad. Like it was surprising not to see him there. I'm not sure what other England centre backs. What other England centre backs are there really? Like to be honest,
That's a problem area.
Connor Cody's been good for Everton, I believe. He's been
I don't
decent.
want.
Like I think he should have been at least given a
In a back three, that's an all right option. He gives you that option. I think he's a good sweeper in a back three.
Yeah, but then also
I don't.
like you did Ivan Tony play at all?
Look, with
I
Harry Kane in the team,
look,
like Ivan Tony does not match up with Harry
but
Kane for me.
hang on. If Harry Kane gets injured, who's your forward?
Well, that's a problem. If Harry Kane gets injured, England are not sniffing a final of a World Cup.
You don't even have a backup. At least like a couple of years ago, like you had Crouch, Owen, Rooney, Heskey as well. Like you had options, and they were all capped. Whereas now it's like, who's your other capped forward? Like who's your other capped centre forward?
Unfortunately, but it's easier to have options when all your options aren't arguably the best striker in the world or one of the best strikers in the world. Because I know Owen had a little period where he maybe could be considered. He obviously won a Ballon d'Or, but it was a very short peak for Michael Owen. So when you're talking around the time 06, I guess, is when you've got Rooney and you've got Crouch as options as well. They give you something different. It's four decent striking options, but it's not Harry Kane level. Harry Kane.
Know. Well, Rooney and Harry Kane.
And that's what.
Come on.
Yeah, go.
No, I'm just saying, like, Rooney and Harry Kane are, I'd say they're at the same level. I'll probably put Rooney a little bit higher, but...
No, but the problem is when you're talking about when you had all those options, that wasn't later Wayne Rooney. That was 06, teenage Wayne Rooney. He was still coming up. He wasn't quite... We knew he'd get to that level because of the way he arrived, but he wasn't Wayne Rooney of 2010 through, or whatever, that three-peat winning Manchester United side, and then even later.
But it's like what you said. Like where are the options though? Like if you need something different, like where for instance you can. And Harry Kane isn't really playing as an out and out number 9 for England. He's playing as like a number 10 or even 9.5 because he's dropping into the midfield and picking up the ball there. So where are the options where like if you go a goal down and you need a striker? And like you pull Harry Kane into the number 10, and then you put Ivan Toney in front of him, for instance, because based on form, Ivan Toney deserved to get into a squad, but then to not give him any minutes at all in these 2 games, like not even to put him on in the last 10 or 15 minutes, especially against Italy where you're trailing. I know. Obviously they came back from behind against Germany, but like, don't you want to see your options and like? They have no more international friendlies. Like they have no more internationals actually until the World Cup. So you can't see how things are going to function.
Yeah, that's the bigger problem for me. Not seeing the options, but seeing the actual best players function together. And I think you're 100% right on the Harry Maguire point. He shouldn't be anywhere near even the squad, to be quite honest. But yeah, so you're already shoehorning in an inferior player. I don't know. You talk about obviously Tony not getting chances, but Rashford, I don't know if he's injured. Was he in the squad? I didn't see him at all.
No, he wasn't.
Exactly. Where's Jadon Sancho, who's been on the up for Man United as well?
Yeah,
not there. And then the tactics, it's like the French problem. Why are you playing this formation that empties your midfield? And I know Declan Rice is sort of in that Kante mould. Obviously, has not achieved the things in the game that N'Golo Kante has, but covers the ground of sort of 1.5, 2 players. So I guess in that way, it could be a good formation for him. But I mean, Reece James and I guess it was Saka in the first game and then Shaw in the second game. I don't like the balance of those fullbacks. I don't like Saka. I like maybe as a wing back. No, I don't even like him as a wing back. He should be playing as one of a front 4.
Exactly, but why is he even playing at left back?
Yeah, he has the option to play as a wing back, but I don't like whoever you're gonna.
It's a last
If you're
resort.
gonna play a wing back, if you're gonna play a wing back in this England team, it needs to be on the right side when you have Kyle Walker or Reece James as a third centre back. So obviously he can maybe do it there, but I would rather see them play like a 4-2-3-1. And the most important player for me, apart from Harry Kane, and they haven't got him going at all, is Jude Bellingham. Jude Bellingham has to perform the role of 2 midfielders in there and give England an opportunity to play, I think, with a fluid front four where Kane gets more support. I thought Sterling was good in the two games and sort of said that he should probably be selected as one of those four. Obviously, Kane has to be one of those four, and then I think Saka, definitely for me, has to be one of those
Yeah,
four.
you saw him against Germany.
Obviously, and sort of that fluid. And then I guess who do you put in the other position? You could maybe put Mount. You could put Grealish in a system that
Foden.
works like that. I think. Yeah. Oh, and Foden. Sorry, Foden has to be in the team. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think maybe you could put Sterling as a second striker off Kane, more support. But I just think they shouldn't be shoehorning in a player like Harry Maguire and to play a back five when I think they could just play a back four. Stones and White. It doesn't fill me with confidence, but on international standards, it's good enough to. If it's solid for long enough, then I think they can challenge for it. But Southgate has just been playing the same system forever, and they fall into into the stale category where I have two teams, and that's England and Belgium, who look completely stale to me. And we've seen this story from these two teams before. Where's your new wrinkle? Where's your innovation? Where's the thing that you're doing to make your team play better? And England, I couldn't agree more with you. Have a Gareth Southgate problem going into this World Cup.
Yeah, I was actually also going to say, like you mentioned Upamecano, like once he moved to Bayern, his just form fell off, and like Maguire's form has fallen off. Similar, and like he always has a mistake in him as well. Like both goals against Germany. The second one a little bit less so because he loses the ball right on the edge of the German box. So, but the first goal is 100% his fault. Like not only does he give the ball away, but then he gives the penalty away. The second goal, I'll give 50% blame to him. But yeah, like what you said, he's being shoehorned in. And I think Gareth Southgate's like, when you have a player with such experience, like you need him around the young lads. So when you do go down, you can keep things calm. It's like you went down because of him. Like he's the reason why you're behind in the first place. Like far out. Like I just think, and I've heard a lot of people saying Thomas Tuchel should take the England job just before the World Cup, but he doesn't have any time he doesn't have any games to work with them though. Like you can't. Go on.
And my problem with Tuchel as well is he is a 3-4-3 manager, and I don't know. In recent years, he hasn't shown an ability to coach something else. So I think you might be getting a lot of the same problems. Because I'm not actually saying that Gareth Southgate's a bad manager per se, but I think he's made questionable decisions recently.
He's probably stubborn,
and he's gotten very stale. Yeah. I think because he had success with the 3-4-3, particularly in the last Euros to get to the final. And I guess he's planted his flag on that, whereas I just think there's better solutions. And I think there's better solutions for your second most important player in Jude Bellingham to get him playing better, because they must get him playing better. Because for me, he's that midfielder who can do a little bit of number 8 and he can do a little bit of number 10 as well.
But it's similar
and has the energy to do both.
But it's similar with Deschamps and France. Like you mentioned, like France, like they're a team that should be playing on the front foot, should be dominating the ball, should be creating like 20, 30 chances in a game, really, with the players that they have. But like even from going into the 2018 World Cup, they weren't great to watch, and like, they were very defensive minded. And England as well, just they're not, at least in these two games, they're not great to watch. Like they're very defensive. They're playing on the back foot, and that's why if you go back to episode 3. That's why they were one of my favorites, because like they were playing better at least. But like on paper, they have some of the best players in the world, and you would expect them to make a deep run. But now I'm just like, I'm just not sure, unless they can pick it up for the World Cup. Like, yeah.
And I don't think that dominant teams or teams that should be dominant play with three at the back. And I'm not a formation snob. I love all formations. I love seeing how they all work. But if you're meant to be the dominant team, you're meant to be one of the favourites. I don't think you should be playing with a back 3/5. I think you got to go back 4 because you've got to have defenders good enough. If you're going to win the whole tournament, you've got to have defenders good enough to play a back 4. And we have not seen a back 3 win it in this century. I don't think. I think it's all been back 4s. Maybe that '02 Brazil team might have played a back 3.
No.
But
Carlos, Cafu?
yeah, I think they did. I think it was like Lucio Edmilson and maybe Roque Jr. I can't remember the third one, but it was. But then you look at why they played a back 3 because they had. Guess who the wingbacks were?
Cafu and Carlos.
Cafu and Carlos, absolute world class. I mean, you look at the French wingbacks. Theo Hernandez went fit, yes, but Pavard should be playing as a third centre back and then maybe play a winger. The English wingbacks, I mean, the right side is pretty strong. Obviously, you can play. Although Reece James, recent form has not been very good, and I thought it showed in these 2 games. He was anonymous. I know he delivered the cross for the Shaw equaliser, but apart from that, he wasn't advanced and he wasn't defensive. I don't know. He was sort of playing this in-between wing-back position.
What's Shaw doing
the
on the
left
team
side,
as well?
Well, the left side, I was just going to say the left side's a problem.
But like
without a
Shaw
doubt.
hasn't been playing for United either, has he?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know where Ben Chilwell is because I think they have
he's
to play
just
him.
starting to come back.
Yeah. So and then I guess we'll transition to Belgium. I think Belgium have actually the best balance in terms of wing backs. But on the flip side of that, because I always like Carrasco as a wing back because he's sort of a winger. But on the flip side of that, talk about shoehorning centre backs into a team. They're still relying on Jan Vertonghen, who's now playing at Anderlecht, and Toby Alderweireld, who I don't even know where he's playing at the moment. And these guys they're a good 5 years past their peak. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh, but they're a good few years past their peak. And then the third centre back who got absolutely bullied by Kiefer Moore in that Wales game, I don't know what his name is. Like that's how obscure he is, and we're trying to shoehorn him just so we can play a 3-4-3. Might as well be. But this is what I'm talking about. Just so you can marry your system when it's not the best system for your team, and you're also relying on Axel Witsel, who is now a converted centre back for Atletico, but he's back in central midfield. I don't think he has the legs to be one of the two. But the good thing, if you're of a Belgian persuasion, is you have the jewel in the crown, who is one of the best players in the world in Kevin De Bruyne. So I guess you give yourself a chance. They need Lukaku fit and firing going into the World Cup. I don't know what his injury is and how long he's out for, but I don't know. This Belgian team's very stale for me, and I think we said it on the last pod months ago, but about internationals, but I think they've missed their window, and I don't see them making much noise in this World Cup.
This team's aged, and Hazard, ever since his Real Madrid move, hasn't been that shining light for whatever team he's played for. I watched. Who the hell do they play? Netherlands.
Yeah,
I wasn't too impressed, I gotta say.
With Belgium.
Yeah, like it just seemed like something was really off, something was missing. It never really seemed like they were going to score, maybe because Batshuayi was playing up front and not Lukaku. The team's aged. They've lost that generation. They're in Croatia's group. I see that game being a draw rather than a Belgium win, to be honest.
Oh, definitely. I'd see it more of a Croatia win if I had to pick one.
I don't know who's going to score the goal for Croatia, to be honest, but
that is a good point.
Yeah, but they still have a world class goalkeeper as well in Courtois.
Yeah.
Got De Bruyne. If Hazard still has two more months to get more match fitness and more games under his belt, which he has started to get since Benzema's been injured. But I'm just not not too hot on Belgium anymore. Like they had their chance in 2016 at the Euros and 2018 at the World Cup, and they missed it narrowly in both occasions, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment of Belgium. And I guess so you watched the Dutch game. I'm interested to get what your perspective is on the Dutch.
Uh, I'm not hot on the Dutch either. Like they just it just seems like there's I don't know, it there doesn't seem like there has really that that deadliness that the Dutch teams used to have, like back when like Robben played, Van Nistelrooy, Schneider, Van der Vaart. It just seems like there's something missing in the midfield and up front. Just that like that killerness, and
Well, I think, yeah, sorry, go on.
yeah, and it just seems like maybe because Van Gaal is like, I think he's transitioned. I don't know if he's always been a defensive minded coach or he's just sort of become that. But yeah,
I think he's always been that.
I don't know because like I need you'd obviously need to go back to that Ajax team that he won the Champions League in the '90s to see whether he was.
Helps when you have all those generational talents in the one team.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're young, so they're more, there's
Yeah,
more
and
exuberance.
it doesn't seem like there's any generational talents. Like who? I'm just trying to like off the top of my head. What you have Frankie De Jong. Who
No, well,
else?
you've already hit the
Burgoyne.
nail on the head. It's the attackers. It's the players in attacking
But also the
areas that you can't
midfield
have
as well.
Well, no. See, they were a bit unlucky. Koopmeiners gets injured in the first game within, I think it was a minute, and he's been Atalanta's best player for me this season, and Atalanta are top of Serie A. So he's a good central midfielder for me. And Frankie De Jong has the potential because he is still young
But like,
to
what
be a
about?
generational talent.
But like out wide or the players around
That's
them.
what I'm saying. The
Yeah.
attackers, the attacking line, any wingers or strikers, they don't have much. I mean, Cody Gakpo has the potential to be a very good player in the future. And I guess he's your most exciting attacker, to be fair, because Bergwijn doesn't really excite me. I guess they used Janssen in the second game. I can't remember who they used out wide in the first game as well. And obviously as well, they've lost Genie Wijnaldum.
Is he injured or?
what did he? I think he did his ACL or so. I think he did something really serious at the start of the season for Roma. So I think he's probably out for the World Cup. He's been a huge part of this Dutch team recently, and would give you the option to play a midfield three as well. But yeah, all the generational talent or potential generational talent is not in the front line. It's De Jong, and interestingly enough, De Ligt doesn't play in either of these games, which I find fascinating.
That is interesting.
But obviously, you have Virgil van Dijk, who
and
is
Ake
a little more
played
up
as
and
well,
down
but-
than. Sorry.
Yeah, Ake partnering him, I think.
Yeah, and he's had a decent season.
Yeah, he's okay.
Virgil van Dijk's definitely your generational talent in this team. And he's a little bit up and down going into the World Cup, which is obviously a concern. One thing I do like about this Dutch team is the balance in the wing back areas. Denzel Dumfries, I think, is a really good wing back, really good up and down, physical, get in behind from wide areas sort of player. And then you can balance that with a Daily Blind on the other side who can come in and do a central midfield role, is intelligent, can fill in whatever gap needs to be filled in, can even play as a wide centre back if needed. So if I was going to point to one thing, I do like that. And I do kind of, in comparison particularly to other central midfields in international football, I do like this central midfield if Koopmeiners and De Jong are fit. But yeah, nothing in attack. So I don't like the central midfield enough to put them above, say, a Croatia. So I think I put Croatia in a dark horse. I think I put them in a dark horse category, but like I think I rate my dark horse category better than the category that I put the Netherlands and Germany in, which is the flawed category. I think these two teams in the Netherlands and Germany are very flawed going into this World Cup. So far I've got the contender of Brazil, I've got the in-between stale and contender in Portugal, Spain, and France. And we'll talk about Portugal and Spain in a bit. And then I've got stale, which was England and Belgium. And now I've got the flawed category, which is the Dutch and the Germans. And I know you would have seen the Germans against England at least. So I'm interested to get your perspective on the Germans as
I
well.
was actually impressed, man. Like a lot of the game they played on the edge of the England on the edge of the England box, but I think it's the same thing that I don't know if I said it in the pod or I might have just said it like between us last year during the Euros. Like Germany don't have a striker. They just don't have someone to put the ball in the back of the net. They have they have all this talent like in and around, so like midfield and out wide. But yeah, they're missing someone to just score 5 or 6 goals in a World Cup. Like they're missing someone to actually just like like a closer. They're missing a closer.
I would say Germany haven't had a striker in a very long time, to be fair. In fact,
Since Closer.
Germany.
Closer was
Well, I
always
know
scoring
Klose
5 or
has
6 goals in the World Cup.
It's crazy because Klose has that record of scoring so many World Cup goals, but was he ever a top striker at any point in his career? I
think
wouldn't
he was,
actually
like,
say he probably was.
he was like maybe not in the sense of
He was a good striker for Germany. He scored goals for Germany and
Bayern.
tended to do it at World Cups, but was never a striker that you thought this guy could win a World Cup for us. I don't think I never saw him that way.
Not
anyway.
on his own.
So, like Germany, I would counter that by saying I agree with you. First and foremost, they don't have that focal point like a Harry Kane or someone like that. But the fact that they were still able to score 3 goals against England points me in the direction where I think their problems are, and that's in defence.
Yeah,
because they scored 3 and they couldn't win the game
too.
because they conceded 3. And Saul is your best centre back, and I think he's good at best. Good at best, but I don't like his lack of mobility because he's a truck. And the fullbacks, my God, the fullbacks are so weak. So weak. I don't even know how to say his name, but Raum or whatever his name is on left back. He's just he might as well be. He's just an irritant on the pitch. And he doesn't have the talent to back it up, which annoys me. I hate players like that. And Hoffman on the other side is bang average at best. So huge problems for me at fullback and even in centre back because Schlotterback is eccentric at best. Sula, like I said, is their best centre back. I can't remember Thilo Kehrer they played. I think they brought on in the first game. So yeah, this German team I don't fancy. I think the front four has the potential to be decent. Obviously, Werner's a bit of your, I want to say wild card to be kind, but he's so far off form, especially in front of goal. So you got Sane, Muller, and hopefully Musiala in behind that. But you've also got the option of Gnabry. So I think they're pretty strong in attacking areas behind a striker. And the midfield is quite strong in Kimmich and Gundogan. So they like a lot of these international teams, like I just said with the Dutch, they're a team who have good areas, but they're flawed. And the Dutch are flawed up front, and the Germans for me are flawed particularly in the fullback areas, which I just don't like at all for them.
Every team seems to be like imbalanced. You know that meme of the horse where like the arse of the horse is like perfect, the middle is like okay, it's a little okay, and then like the head is just like what the hell is this? It seems that every team is sort of like that. The team that is least like that is, we obviously touched on, Brazil. I would have thought England is the least like that, but the guy that screws everything up is Southgate, who like he just starts like, it's like, oh, color in between the lines, and then he just like starts bloody marking everywhere other than the horse to color it in. He's the one that ruins that picture, in my opinion.
But even with England, I still don't like their centre backs. So they're still flawed somewhere, even if not for Southgate.
Who would? I know we're going back to England, but we'll just touch on the centre backs. Like, so you got Stones, Ben White, even though he's playing right back for his club, Dyer. Who's the other? And like, I'm not putting Maguire in this at all because he isn't playing for Man United. Who else? Who's like your fourth or even fifth centre back? Who's there really? I mentioned Connor Cody, but you said that he'd suit a back three.
But we also got to be fair and say we said this about Brazil after we went through the first three. But the problem for me is those first three for Brazil are actual.
Oh, well, like
they're
for
great.
England.
Yeah, the England ones are not. Yeah, exactly. But the Brazil ones are at least closer to it, and at least one of them is world class in Marquinhos. So that for me is the problem. If any team that has to rely on fourth and fifth choice centre backs for any portion of this tournament, I think is at a great disadvantage anyway. So for me, it's about those first at least three options, if not just the two, and having a full strength squad, which we obviously hope they all have. But I don't know. And then there was just one other team I wanted to touch on before we go into those other two sort of in-between teams in Portugal and Spain, and we touch on them a little bit more.
I want to see, is this one of the main teams, or like, is this a dark horse? Because I have a dark horse that I want to throw out there. Hang on, I've lost you for a bit.
Okay, you give me your dark horse.
My dark horse is Serbia.
Oh, he did it. You did it again. You did it again.
Wait, really?
I wanted to build that up and say you're not going to like saying who your dark horse is because I had a feeling it would be Serbia. But definitely, Serbia have a fun team.
Yeah, like in Vlahovic and Mitrovic up front, like, and also they got Tadic in behind, and is it Lukic? But is it Lukic?
Yeah, but obviously Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, who plays in the central midfield.
Is he injured
as well
though? Because he didn't play.
He didn't play the second game. Yeah. He did play the first game, but he did play the second. And then obviously Kostic is the left wing back as well. Who's quite good.
I think that's the one. Yeah.
So the question is Alexander Mitrovic the best striker in the world at the moment? What the hell is going on? He is scoring goals for fun for club and country.
Maybe based on form, you could say that. Like as a classical number 9, that's
it's obviously tongue in cheek, but
you got Haaland obviously, but I
know, but this guy's been a sensational form. But Serbia are definitely fun. They were in my fun category.
Yeah, I actually think that they could be a dark horse. The only thing is the midfield problem, I suppose. Well, I haven't watched them, so I'm just basing this on paper, and like watching a player here or there for their club.
Well, I watched both their games actually, and obviously I took a keen interest to the Norway-Serbia game, which was the second of the two, because the winner of that went up into League One for the next Nations League, and they won it away from home against Norway, who had Ødegaard and Haaland playing. And it was Vlahovic and Mitrovic who scored the goals, and not Haaland in this one. But they're so fun because they play with two out-and-out strikers.
Yeah.
Two guys who are big physical presences who are good in the air. Mitrovic is unbelievable in the air. He's just a bully when it comes to aerial balls. He's crazy good. And Vlahovic is not shabby himself in the air. Obviously has a bit more to his game, but... and then Tadic in behind is a good, intelligent player. We've seen that for years for Ajax. And then Kostic and Sergej Milinkovic-Savic. So just having Milinkovic-Savic in the midfield means that's not the problem area for me. The problem area is the three centre-backs. Will they be good enough and serviceable enough to, if they're asked to play, get the ball into those good more attacking players? And will they be good enough and serviceable enough to be good enough defensively to keep Serbia in the game and let their attackers sort of have a chance to win games? That's the big question mark for me over this team.
Yeah, it's sort of funny that sometimes around here I hear people say, "Oh, like if Yugoslavia never broke up, like imagine that team." Imagine putting Vlahovic and Mitrovic into the Croatia team.
I know. You
Because
don't,
I think
and you don't even need the whole of Yugoslavia. You just need Croatia and Serbia, really.
yeah, because I think the Croatian team is a little bit more complete than the Serbian team. But like I'm just trying to think of defenders though. Like that's still a problem area. But like if you can probably look at, for instance, Slovenia was part of Yugoslavia as well. So you could you have Oblak. I know he's not been in the best form, but you have Oblak in goal. But yeah, defenders, I'm not too sure on who to put in, to be honest. Like, I think Croatia's defense is okay. Serbia's, I haven't, like I said, I haven't.
Was Slovakia part of Yugoslavia?
No, no.
Oh, that was Czechoslovakia. You're right.
But yeah, Bosnia, like you have Dzeko, then it's still like you have him as a backup.
Yeah, exactly.
Pjanic was good a couple of years ago, so he could have slotted into that midfield. You had Macedonia and Albania as well that were part of it, Montenegro. But like, yeah, defense is still a little bit suspect, even if you combine all the countries together. I think, defense is still the weakest, but like midfield would be absolutely stacked. Forward line would be stacked. Goalkeepers would be stacked. And yeah, just the defense is like maybe like a 7 out of 10, maybe I'd say.
I think when we get really close to the World Cup, we should do a Yugoslavian team.
Yeah, I reckon.
Would look like.
I reckon that would actually be fun. Like maybe like go 2 players for every position, so like have a 22-man squad.
Yeah, that would definitely be fun.
Yeah, that would actually be fun. Like we should do that.
Yeah. And that would be fun, just like this Serbian team, who I'm looking forward to seeing in the World Cup, because
I actually have them as a dark horse. I reckon they should. I haven't seen their group. I'm not sure who's in the group. Let me just have a look at that, to see whether they have like 2 other world class teams with them. But I don't think
I don't remember seeing a group of death.
Yeah,
I don't remember seeing a traditional group of death in this one.
World Cup groups. Hang on, there's a picture of it. I don't need to go to the actual. Serbia. Where are you? Group G. They're with Brazil, Switzerland, and Cameroon. Ooh, Switzerland could give them. Yeah.
Yeah, Switzerland and Denmark are 2 teams that fall into my decent category.
Yeah, Denmark
good,
actually look
functional teams.
Denmark actually look pretty decent. But
like they're not exciting, but they're functional, and they'll give you problems if you're not on your game.
Yeah. I'm just looking at that Group G. I'm not sure Serbia make it out of that group. It all comes down to that Switzerland game, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that.
But if they make it out,
I'm hoping.
I reckon they can make the quarters. If they get a good, not a good, but like a good matchup in the round of 16. I reckon they could make the quarters.
And I'm hoping that they do get out, because while I have nothing against Switzerland, I think they're a good functional team. The Serbian ceiling is so much higher than the Swiss ceiling.
Yeah.
But the Swiss basement is probably lower than
We're just riding off Cameroon.
Yeah, well, and I didn't get a chance to see them, but the only African team going off paper with a good enough squad for me to cause any upsets is Senegal. I don't see any other African team really having enough quality to do much in the World Cup, to be fair.
Who plays for Ghana now? Because they always used to be like a dark horse, remember?
Not much, man. I watched them against Brazil, and it was Andre Ayew and Jordan Ayew, I think, maybe played a bit. And there's Kudos from Ajax as well, the young kid who scored the goal at Anfield. But he didn't do much in the game. But I think moving away from sort of that fun team to those last 2 teams that I guess we want to hit on, I don't think we have anyone else to hit on apart from Portugal and Spain, who played an important game this morning that went the Spanish way, and they qualify for the finals. Which was fascinating in itself. So you go where you want to go, whether you want to start on Portugal, Spain, or whether you want to start on the game itself. But I'm interested to just wrap up this pod on those 2 teams.
I think it's just like it touches on everything. But like, I'm actually really disappointed in Portugal. Like, you look at their team, and you're like, they should be should they be? I'm not sure if dominating games, but they should be doing a lot better in games. Like especially like with the midfield that they have and like the players they have in general. Like so, you got Cancelo, Bernardo Silva, Bruno Fernandes, Ronaldo up front. What other players am I missing? Ruben Diaz,
Leao.
Neto as well. Like, there's such good players in that team, but they're just. Again, I think it's the coaching problem. I think it's similar to. I think that what's the coach's name again? Can't remember.
Fernando Santos.
Santos. Like he won the Euros in 2016, being defensive minded. But now he has better players that have come through. And it's like you're still enforcing the same tactics. It's like you have way more gifted players on the ball now than what you did back then. You can play with a bit more freedom and a little bit more, panache, zazz. I don't know, whatever word you want to describe it. But like, they should be dominating games, I reckon. But they're just like so defensive minded. I'm actually like really disappointed in them. Like,
I'll agree and disagree with your point. I think the coaching in terms of the balance between being an open attacking team and being a defensive cagey team, I think I agree he can move that meter a little bit more towards being a bit more open and a bit more offensive with the players that they have. So I'll agree that maybe they've got a coaching problem. But in terms of him putting the right teams out and the right formations for the players to succeed, I don't think they have a problem there. I think he put out good teams in these games. I think he put out good balanced teams, played with a back four, played the right players in the right positions. It's interesting to see, and both these teams kind of did it in the international games, but it was interesting to see Ruben Diaz playing next to Danilo as the two centre-backs.
Yeah.
And Danilo's played a little bit there for PSG this season, and to be fair, he's done quite a good job as one of two centre-backs. So that has a high ceiling on it as well. It also could go wrong because he's not experienced in that position. But what you must say, he is playing next to one of the best centre-backs in the world, so that always helps. João Cancelo obviously is one of the best fullbacks. So in terms of putting the best team out there, I think he did that. But I will agree, particularly this game this morning at home against Spain. I think they could have been a little bit more open and gone for it a little bit more. But they have a major problem for me, where their major problem and why they're not a genuine contender isn't so much that balance, but it's the Ronaldo confidence issue at the moment. Because it was interesting, against Spain, I actually thought physically, like, I know it's not Ronaldo of old, but he looked fine. He looked like he could compete at that level. He looked like he could still run in behind when asked. He looked like he could go for the whole 90 minutes. Physically, for me, it's not a huge deterioration. And it's funny to say this about Cristiano Ronaldo. It looked like he was bereft of confidence. He was taking touches not quite in the right place. He wasn't quite playing his balls in the right place. And then when he did have chances to take a touch and finish, the touch was either bad or the finish was bad. So this is interesting to see, and that's something that even though he's so old, he's still for me, he's still the guy Portugal look to. Even though they have all this talent around him, he still is that guy, and he needs to at least may not be Ronaldo of old, but he needs to at least have his confidence back if this team's really going to have a shout of winning the World Cup.
Is Rafael Leão the left wing?
From AC.
Why didn't he start? Like, why did Jota start ahead of him? Because Jota has only played like 15 minutes.
Jota's been playing pretty well.
But he only
recently.
he's
only back.
He's only just back. Like, whereas Leao's
I know
played,
he's
like,
only
fantastic.
just back, but he scored in the first game against the Czech Republic, and then he looks pretty good. I think what you get with Jota is that pressing forward, and that's important. You don't get that from Leão. So,
but then, like, you know how you mentioned like the Ronaldo factor, like someone like that who's, it's hard to say this, but like it's like because it's Cristiano Ronaldo, but like he's 37. He's keeping João Felix out of the squad though, or out of the
No,
starting
that's
11.
fine. That's
I I,
fine.
I, I know I know right
I'm
now that
out.
might be
I'm out
fine.
on João Felix.
Yeah, I think João Felix needs a move to a team that actually plays attacking football.
Okay, we talked.
We've already talked about that,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm just looking at the team now and like, yeah, they for me they should be doing a lot better or playing a lot better than what they do play.
What I'll say on the flip side of that is that they were still within 2 minutes of making it to the Nations League finals.
Yeah,
So as in the grand schemes of things where we've talked about other nations, I think their problems are pretty minimal compared to other nations. I think
yeah,
if your balance is to be defensive, to be fair, they're a pretty good defensive team when they do play like that and they can exert a lot of control. Now, you and I both agree that maybe that balance could be a bit more towards offensive football, but look, they're like it's not like they're trying to play defensively and they're not even good at it. At least they're still pretty good at playing defensively. But if they don't have any real options apart from Ronaldo up front, so Ronaldo, we need, at least need a confident Ronaldo. If not, if we're not going to get Ronaldo of yesteryear, which is obviously gone,
but the
we
thing
need
is
at
like,
least a confident one.
but especially in that first half where like you had the midfield of Koke, Rodrigo, and Soler. Like they should have went at him. Like you feel that they should have went at him a lot more than what they did. And like because when I felt like there was a change of the tide when that Barcelona midfield came on. When Pedri, Gavi, and Sergio Busquets came on, like Spain, for me, I felt that Spain started to assert a little bit more control of the game, and that's when I felt it might have been a little bit harder to go at them. But I think that they should have went out. They should have went at them in the first half, or at least in the first like 60 minutes. But like they were that first 45 was just like very. It was very defensive, even from both teams, from Spain as well. I felt.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. It was pretty cagey in the first half.
There was nothing going forward really for either team.
I'll somewhat disagree in. I don't think Gavi is necessarily a mainstay in a midfield three. I don't think he should be a guaranteed starter. I think there's some games where what impresses me most with Gavi is his counter press and his pressing off the ball, how quick he is in transition when the team loses the ball. He's absolutely fantastic at that. One of the best midfielders in the world already at his young age in terms of pressing the ball. But I don't think he's a great technician. I don't think he's great on the ball. His stature suggests that he would be, but for me, he's not fantastic in that area. But he's so young. Like I'm not saying he's a finished product. Pedri for me has to be a mainstay in the midfield. He's absolutely fantastic. Offers you all those technical qualities and isn't terrible against the ball. He's not Gavi levels, but he's not terrible. Busquets is one that I don't need to see unless, and here's the interesting thing because Portugal were using Danilo as the centre back. You say that Spain changed the tide in doing that. Well, I think a big influence in maybe changing the tide of the game was Rodri going to centre back. Because I think he has the physical stature to be a centre back, and if your team sort of needs to attack more, needs to have more possession of the ball, if he's not going to take Ramos, who he left out of the squad, and he's not going to, I think there's grumblings that PK might make himself available for the squad. But if neither of those guys are there, Rodri might be your best option next to Pau Torres, because I've already talked about how I don't love Eric Garcia. And obviously they lose that game against Switzerland to two set pieces where you have to sacrifice one of your centre-backs to play a 5'10" Eric Garcia. So I'm not huge on him. I don't think he offers you enough on the ball to justify his sort of misnomers in defence. He's not terrible by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think he's that class. So I think Rodri, if you're not taking PK or Ramos, is actually your best option there. But the fact that PK and Ramos are options, I think the Spain team has a lot of options in a lot of areas, and I had to bump them up from a sort of stale team into being a sort of semi-contender just below. And you can't be a stale team when you have Gavi and Pedri as pretty important players because they're so young and they offer that unpredictability.
I'm not impressed with their
In the
forward
first,
line though.
yeah, Morata's been in better form this season for
Yeah.
Atletico. He's probably been Atletico's best attacking player this season. So at least you have that. Ferran Torres, I'm not a huge fan of. And Jeremy Pino has sort of fallen off a little bit. I know he's like 20 years old, but when I first saw him burst onto the scene, I think at the last Nation League finals, I was like, this kid's really good. This kid could, and he still can be really good, but yeah, he hasn't continued on that upward sort of like what you'd see with a Vinicius over the last couple of years. So yeah, I'm not overly convinced by that front line. It's not as good as Portugal's when even Ronaldo playing like this is still probably not as good as Portugal's, but the depth they have, the midfield options they have, he didn't even use Marcos Llorente, who I think, as a side note, is probably near the top of my Liverpool wish list as a player who can come in and replace Jordan Henderson and do probably a better job than Jordan Henderson did there. Although obviously you miss the intangibles of Jordan Henderson's leadership, but he didn't even use him really. He used him, I think, in the second half of the first game against Switzerland. I think he offers good balance. I'd probably be more inclined to play, especially if I'm going to play Busquets, I'd probably be more inclined to play him over Gavi, just as more of a presence in that midfield. Because we saw what Busquets, Gavi, and Pedri did at the Allianz against Bayern. I don't know. I don't need to see Busquets in there anymore. I know it's sacrilegious. I know I said it last pod, but he gives you an option. He's good in the squad, but I don't need to see him from the start. Rodri's just so far and away superior for
Yeah.
me at this point of their careers. But yeah, that Spain team had to be bumped up. And while I wasn't overly impressed, I just look at their options. I look at their manager, who's a proven manager for Barcelona, and obviously took this Spain team to the semis of the Euros. Yeah, and I just think they're definitely in that same category as Portugal and France for me.
Yeah, I think that they're probably in or around there, but I just I feel like I'm repeating myself, but like this is another one of those teams where I think you're lacking a goal scorer because like Morata's always been he's been touted to like take that mantle and like he pops up with a goal here and there, but he's not in that same mold of a Fernando Torres or a David Villa where like when the ball comes to him you're like, okay, this should be put in the back of the net. And a lot of teams lack that. Like Germany lacks that as well.
Yeah.
Croatia
Brazil
lacks
don't
that.
have that type of player.
But I think they have enough goals in them. Like especially with Jesus now learning his trade, playing in the middle. I think then you could. They could be very dangerous. And like Vinicius like last year he got like 22 or 23 goals in all competitions and like 20 assists. I think they have the goal.
Yeah,
I think they have enough goals in them. Whereas like you look at the front three, like Ferran Torres, Morata, Sarabia. Are they getting 20 goals a season for their clubs? No. Like Morata barely even gets into double figures if I'm not mistaken. So I just don't trust. I just don't see where the goals come from. In all honesty, but you know what's funny? That's like one of my taglines. I don't see where the goals come from. I said that for Arsenal United, and they scored bloody 3 goals against us. But like I'm just looking at on paper. Like I can't really see it, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. And I put if you forced me to order those 3 teams of France, Portugal, and Spain, it would be in that order. I think the French are second.
Yeah, at least with France, I can
Spain.
see where the goals come from, like through Mbappe and Giroud. Like I can see that. Although interesting with Giroud, like I think he's the first number 9 to not score in a World Cup and win the World Cup. Like being the actual main striker that starts like every game. I think that's I think that stat like that's an actual like stat or whatever. But Giroud is like he's a good option and like he functions in like I've always liked Giroud as a striker, to be honest. So like at least then, yeah, like with France, you can see where the goals come from, but like with these other teams, you're like, I just don't know where it comes from. But
Yeah.
on Spain,
Yeah.
I'd say their midfield rivals, Croatia's, to be honest. I'd say that
Yeah. And
it's either
particularly,
the best or the second best. It depends on what you rate higher between Croatia and Spain, but I'd say those two are the first and second best midfields.
yeah. Yeah, you could probably go with that. Portugal's midfield's pretty good, but it's not as traditional a flat three.
Yeah.
It's more of Fernandez in front of Neves, and I've always liked William Carvalho. To be fair, I think he's a pretty good player.
Would you take him at
Um,
Liverpool?
nah, he's not mobile enough to play at
Uh,
Liverpool. He's a bit
he's
truck-like,
he's
but
immobile.
yeah, he's a little bit immobile. But especially with Spain's options in that area, I think Enrique would be doing this squad a disservice not to pick. For me, I'd pick both PK and Ramos, but he's got to at least pick one of them if PK makes himself.
Ramos, if he's
Well,
actually fit and playing, because like I think last year, like
well, he has been, and he didn't pick him. It's madness.
well, no, but last year he wasn't fit. Like he wasn't fit. Like
Yeah,
he
I
was
know,
injured. That's why
but
he
for
didn't go to the
these
Euros.
games, he was for this
Yeah, that's an
bout of
interesting one.
international
I
fixtures.
think they had a bit of
Yeah,
a falling out because of him not being picked for the Euros last year. I think
yeah,
because I think he was coming back from injury, so he was trying to make himself fit for the Euros, but he just didn't have enough game time under his belt going into the Euros, and I think they might have had a falling out. So, but yeah, if Ramos gets into that team, that's going to add so much, and then PK maybe in the squad, like just having those two in and
yeah.
around that team, which is like it looks like a very young team. It will help them for this tournament, and then I guess that this can be sort of like you don't expect them to win it, but like if this can be, I guess, a sort of like passing of the torch where like they hand off all of this tournament experience to these young players, and it's like, okay, we'll use this one as a platform to see how far we can get, and then in the next and to get some experience under our belts, and then in the next one we go on and win it. I think it could be like perfect for them.
And just to either side of the centre backs as well, very experienced, still I think very good fullbacks in Jordi Alba and Carvajal, who I think should be the first two. I don't know why Azpilicueta played in the first game. Guy is a good backup to Jordi Alba, very much in the same mould. So not many weaknesses behind the front three. It's just the front three for Spain, really.
Yeah,
And Unai Simon had a fantastic game, denied Ronaldo on two key occasions this morning. So even he's coming into his own a little bit as well. So definitely in that top four for me as we stand right now. I want to finish the pot on this question. Apart from probably the obvious, which is Croatia going deep and maybe challenging for the whole thing, what will you be rooting for? What will you be supporting and wanting to see in this World Cup?
I think, and this goes to our friendships. I think I've always had a soft spot for Argentina. So I wouldn't mind, and considering it's most likely Messi's, is he 34?
This will be his last World Cup, I'm pretty sure.
Unless he moves into the midfield and plays at 38 and just plays like a bit part role, but who knows? Who knows? But yeah, you'd expect it to be his last World Cup. I think it would be like that sort of fairy tale ending if he can actually finally win the World Cup with Argentina, and his last World Cup. So and then he retires, sort of like what Zidane missed out on doing in 2006, but like Messi actually does it. Yeah, Croatia obviously is my number one team that I'm going to be rooting for. Argentina is like maybe a second one. Did Australia make it?
Yeah, but who cares? Sorry,
you don't really expect them to do much. I guess I'll be like supporting them because
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm there with you, but
yeah,
no.
but out of the other teams, I don't know those two really that I'll be supporting and hoping that they make deep runs.
That's a good storyline, the Messi storyline. The other storylines, I guess,
Ronaldo as well.
I'll be rooting for Messi or Ronaldo if they start to go deep. But I think over them, I would actually be rooting for Neymar and Brazil
Yeah.
as well, and Vinicius as well. That would be a good storyline because this means everything to Neymar's legacy. But my number one thing I think I'll be rooting for is, and it's weird, but I think it'll be France and Kylian Mbappe being a key part.
I don't
If
like the
he
French.
wins back to back as the key man for the French team, he's well on his way to being the greatest to play. Honestly, at this age, can you imagine if he's 23, 24 and he's won 2 World Cups and he was one B on the first World Cup winning team and then undoubtedly the main man of this World Cup winning team already.
Well, isn't
And
that
the French
similar
have a
to Pele?
chance. Well, Pele was
He was
58
17.
and then
17 when he won the first one.
17,
Yeah.
exactly. But the problem is Pele got injured for the 62 World Cup and they won it without him, which is,
But he was in the team,
I
wasn't he?
know, I know. Yeah, he was in the team. He started the tournament, but I think he got injured in one of the games in that tournament. And then obviously they won it again in 70 and he was another big part of that one. If he wasn't the main part, he was a big part. So 3 World Cups in 4 attempts for Pele. Mbappe's the only guy that we have who has the chance of really emulating that as that kind of guy. So that's why I'm rooting for that. You've gone the old storyline or the older player storyline with Messi capping off his fantastic career. I'm
Or
going
even
for
Ronaldo
the
as
young
well.
guy. Yeah, or even
Yeah.
Ronaldo. I'm going for the young guy
But
who has
have
a
you
chance.
have you seen though? I think if Portugal and Argentina both top their groups, I think then they both have a clear run to the final to meet each other in the final. I think that's
I
how.
haven't had a look at the draw. I'll have to do that when we get closer to the tournament.
I
for
think
sure,
I think it's something like that. If they both top, then they can meet each other in the final. But I guess that also works if they both finish second in the group. They can meet each other in the final as well. They just can't finish first and second. And then like there's also those memes like how World War III starts. It's like Ronaldo scoring like 120th minute penalty. It's like perfect, isn't it?
oh man.
But yeah, it would be. I think one of those two teams, like one of those two players, to finally win a World Cup would be the fairy tale ending, or even actually, in all honesty, actually the career that Modric has had, like for him to win a World Cup as well. Like I think in terms of midfield players, like he's getting into that sort of I wouldn't say immortal. You know how like you have your immortals like you.
Nah, for me, he's already there. He's already
you-
immortal, but he could be the best of all the central midfielders if they win a World Cup, and he's a key part.
Yeah,
He could eclipse Zidane. I reckon he could go above Zidane if they can win a World Cup, and he's a key part of it.
Yeah, but we'll see how it all plays out because it obviously all comes down to the draws as well. Because remember in 2018, Germany didn't make it out of the group, so England had an easier run to the to the final, and I don't think Italy weren't there. The Dutch weren't there either. So like if
I don't think they were.
yeah, so if Italy and the Dutch got there as well, then it would have made that side of the draw a little bit harder that England and Croatia had because the first test that either of those sides had was each other in the semis, really.
Well, I must say I always disagree with that point of view because if they were really that hard a test, they would have gotten to the point where they played them. If you get knocked out in the group stage of a World Cup, or if you don't even make it to the World Cup, how good a team were you really?
Yeah, true.
So
especially
that's
considering, especially considering in Europe, like you play, I think it's like 6 teams in each group for the qualifiers, and you play each team twice. So you play home and away. So like if you and considering how the groups are formed, where it's like there's one like you'd say super team or like one world class team, and then like one okay team, and then the rest are just crap. You should be winning the group essentially. And if Italy and the Dutch can't do that to qualify, then that's on them, I guess.
Yeah, that's how I always say it. But
yeah, no, that's
man,
so many
so many fun storylines that we can look for this World Cup, and we're less than 2 months away. So let's see how club football pans out. We'll be back on the club grind for the next 1 and a bit months. But then all focus will shift to the World Cup where we've already gone through it, but that's where legends are made and that's still the pinnacle of the sport. So So many good storylines, so much fun to be had.
Yeah, we'll I guess for our next international pod, we'll have that combined Yugoslavia team ready to go.
We will.
Yeah, I reckon that will actually be a really fun one, because like that's one that's like, you know how you have all these like World 11s or like, you know, best player 11s, like, well, there's no way that they could have played together, but this is like they actually could have played together. Like this is actually something that could have been a reality had, I guess, politics gone differently. But yeah, like that'll be a fun one.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Do you want? Yeah, do you want to sign us out? Yeah, you sign us.
Yeah, I'll
So
sign
much
us out.
class when you sign us out.
Look, we'll be back, I believe, Friday or Saturday for a review. No, preview. I always get those mixed up when the mind isn't working. But a preview of the fixtures for this weekend. I believe there's two big ones. Is it the Manchester Derby on Sunday, and then the North London Derby on Saturday. So it's gonna be a really good pod. I hope it always is. But until then, thanks for coming, and bye for now.